Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back to my channel, Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer with you guys. Just wanting to give you guys some information on the upcoming new moon in Sagittarius. It's really a very, very powerful new moon. And one of the reasons I say that is because, let me just bring up the chart. Okay, so you can see here the new moon in Sagittarius occurs on in Australian Eastern Standard Time, at least. It's the 27th of November. For some others on the other side of the globe, it will be the 26th of November. The new moon is at 4 degrees of Sagittarius, and so therefore you don't need to pay attention to where it is in this chart, because this chart is just drawing it from the point of view of my location. Before I unpack some of the characteristics of this new moon and what it holds within it, the first thing I want to remind you guys is just pay attention to where 4 degrees of Sagittarius is located in your own birth chart. And because that can be in any one of these areas, obviously. The other thing to pay attention to is if you have any particularly personal planets. It can be other planets as well, of course, but particularly personal planets, anywhere from the Sun right through to, well, I would say through to Mars, but you can look at Jupiter and Saturn most definitely. It just adds different layers. The Sun right through to Mars, they're very personal planets, as in the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus and Mars, all very personal planets. So you might have this new moon forming a conjunction to the Sun in your chart, which means you would have been born around the 27th or 28th of November, for example. It's always very important to pay attention to that, because the new moon is always literally a new cycle beginning. So if this new moon forms a conjunction to one of your personal planets, then there is a new cycle giving birth, being born, relevant to that particular planet. And obviously the house location that it's in is going to describe the field of where this new cycle begins as well. Because what's going to happen in a couple of weeks' time, when this new moon becomes a full moon, which will be in the sign of Gemini, basically what is given birth to during this new moon cycle is going to have its illumination, obviously, in a couple of weeks' time. You will see the results of that, in other words. So it is an important, a new moon is always an important time from the point of view of a new cycle beginning. And obviously there's a whole bunch of other layers that go into this in terms of your personal circumstances, obviously, where you're at this point in your life, what's going on in your life, and the story of your life, and the context of your life, and so forth. So it's important to try and integrate it and synthesize it into your personal circumstances. The first thing is, it's a new moon, so it's a new cycle. The second thing is, well, where is it relevant in your life? In other words, is it actually forming a conjunction or opposition to any personal planets in your chart? And also, where is it located in your birth chart? Which house, meaning which area of life, is it speaking to for you? So those are the things that need to be considered first. Now, looking at this new moon, I mean, the archetype Sagittarius it's a fire sign. It's a mutable sign. Fire is always indicative or correlates to spirit, action, wisdom, knowledge. The mutable component, which is the Sagittarius is a mutable sign, refers to adaptability. It's the ability to be adaptable to situations, circumstances, etc. And Sagittarius is the archetype that correlates to belief systems, truth-seeking, faith, belief in oneself, belief in life, and your version of truth as well, because truth is a pathless land, as Krishnamurti has quoted in his speech, very famous speech a long time ago. The matter is, with the new moon being in Sagittarius conjunct Pallas Athena, Pallas Athena is in Sagittarius as well. And Pallas Athena, being so close to this new moon, has a very powerful voice. Now, Pallas Athena, first of all, is a very interesting asteroid goddess, and she can be quite obscure sometimes as well as she's transiting around your chart. But fundamentally, she's a goddess of wisdom and justice, the protectress of the state. Her symbols are owls, serpents, the olive tree, shield and spear, some other things as well. She's a very interesting goddess because she was born from Zeus's head. Zeus was her father, the planet Jupiter. So she correlates to that feminine principle of wisdom. So Jupiter would be the masculine aspect of wisdom, and she's the counterpart, the feminine component of that, because she was born directly out of his head, and she's a virgin goddess as well. She didn't consummate with anybody. She remained a virgin. She's a principle of creative intelligence. So it's got nothing to do with our left brain and right brain to a large degree as well. But the right brain faculty comes into this because she's in the sign of Sagittarius. So there's a very strong image and vibration here of truth, seeking truth, exploring your own version of truth, and being able to see it in a much more clear way than you normally would, because Pallas Athena is literally clear seeing. She has the ability to see things before they actually get filtered through the ego and the left brain. So there's a creative process of intelligence that has an incredible vastness of seeing in terms of what she represents. And she's right there with this new moon. So this whole vibration of this new moon is speaking to our sense of faith and belief, what we believe in, or what we are seeking to understand further in terms of our own understanding of truth, of life, ourself, and fundamentally what we believe, because what everybody believes is different. And it doesn't mean that my version of truth is, any more truthful than your version of truth. Truth is relative. But truth in terms of the Sagittarian level of desiring to seek truth and expand the consciousness, expand the ability to see greater truth, correlates back to natural law, which is seen through nature, Mother Earth. And that's not something that can be disputed. That is just evident in nature, period. So regardless of our personal opinion, it doesn't change the nature of that element of truth that exists within nature. So Pallas Athena here is enabling us, assisting us to synthesize and to integrate a much more expansive understanding of what our own truth is, an exploration of that, an expansion of that. I think what's going to create a little bit of a challenge, but it's also going to be a positive challenge, if you like, is the quincunx. You can see here that Uranus in Taurus is forming what we call a quincunx, or in conjunct. Those two names mean the same thing. It's an aspect of 150 degrees. And Uranus is the archetype that correlates to freedom, liberation, and liberation from the known, more specifically. So this quincunx to this new moon in Pallas Athena is very interesting, because there's going to be a significant challenge in our own consciousness in terms of what we're trying to understand is truthful for our own self, our own life. And a quincunx or an inconjunct is always about an adjustment, right? But we can expand on that by saying that the adjustment is usually referring to the need to leave something behind, and that can be a person, that can be a particular thought about something, that can be a belief about something, or a belief system. So you put those meanings together, then what you see is that the quincunx from Uranus to this new moon is suggesting that by envisioning, because Pallas Athena helps us envision greater truth in Sagittarius, it brings through the creative intelligence process, giving birth to clear seeing, clear visions that are not part of the ego's filtering or thought system pertaining to right, wrong, black and white, etc. This is clear seeing from you could say a higher space, from your own consciousness. So the clear vision that is taking place here through this new moon is going to be altered in some way through the archetype of Uranus because of this quincunx. Now, as I said, that can be a parting of ways of some kind, a leaving behind of something or someone, because you are now able to have a clearer vision of what that situation is about, of what that relationship is about, of what those conditions are about. And that parting of ways or leaving behind, which is reflected through the quincunx from Uranus to this new moon, might be uncomfortable, and it might not be easy to step into, but ultimately it can create a greater sense of liberation and freedom. It will free you up of something that you've been holding on to that hasn't been an accurate perception, an accurate seeing of what the situation was about, or what the relationship was about, or what the conditions were about. So it's a very, very powerful new moon from that perspective, because it's speaking to our ability to see greater truth, our ability to integrate visionary seeing, and how we can actually create or experience a greater sense of liberation from what we uncover in terms of this clear seeing. And it's also related to our path of individuation. So Uranus always brings in the element of what are the factors in your life that are connected to what is known to you, what is familiar, but at the same time, what also holds you back from moving into a path or a stream of consciousness that frees you up from old conditioned beliefs, thought patterns, modes of operation, ways of being. So this Uranus being quincunx here is testing that. It's testing the validity of the so-called truth that you're hanging on to. That could just be connected to one particular aspect of your consciousness and your life. It could be connected to a relationship. So it's ultimately going to be quite a freeing experience with this Uranus forming the quincunx to the new moon. And the new moon is going to give birth to a clear vision. And it's also about integrating, your creative intelligence, going beyond the left brain of what you think is right and wrong, the judgments, the classifications and things like that, which is left brain Gemini, and getting more in touch with the intuitive faculty, right brain Sagittarius. The most beautiful thing that I discovered about this new moon, which is it's just beautiful, the Sabian symbol, which I frequently look at Sabian symbols when I'm looking at a new moon or a full moon or various other things in the birth chart. The Sabian symbols can sometimes be so literal in what they highlight pertaining to the particular degree, because Sabian symbols are exactly that. They are, each degree of the zodiac has a symbolic um, expression. And the book of Sabian Symbols, the one that I use, is by Dane Rudhyar. It's called An Astrological Mandala. It's a great book. You can look at the Sabian symbol degree to your sun, to your moon, to your Mercury, to your ascendant, to absolutely everything in your chart. And sometimes you can find that this Sabian symbol book gives you a beautiful description, a powerful description that can encapsulate such an important component around the essence of your existence and your life in a way that the chart would not reflect necessarily. So it's just a very beautiful additional level you can add to the symbolic meaning of every degree of the 12 zodiac signs, the 12 archetypes in the zodiac. Now, the fifth degree of Sagittarius, which is what we need to look at when, for example, this new moon is at 4 degrees of Sag, and therefore the degree that we need to look at is the fifth degree. That's the system. That's how you work with Sabian symbols. So if your sun in your chart was at 4 degrees of Sag, you wouldn't look at the fourth degree of Sagittarius. You would go to the fifth degree of Sagittarius, and that would give you the symbolic Sabian symbol description of your sun. So the fifth degree of Sagittarius, it's quite extraordinary actually. It's called An Old Owl Sits Alone on the Branch of a Large Tree. Now that heading is superb because when you look at this new moon, it is exactly conjunct by a couple of degrees Pallas Athena. And as I said to you a little while ago, Pallas Athena is the goddess that you will always see with an owl on her shoulder, right? Because she represents wisdom, creative intelligence, wisdom, the feminine expression of intelligence, creative intelligence and wisdom. And as I said, she's always found with an owl. And this fifth degree of Sagittarius is described by an owl sitting alone on a branch of a very large tree. The keynote is this: a poised and wise approach to existence based on a clear perception of unconscious factors and their operation. That's a very powerful keynote because what that is suggesting is that the deeper layers of wisdom that are contained within us have such a deep unconscious component to them, which influence our mode of operation. And I've always said that our behavior, as we see ourselves behaving and acting on a day-to-day basis, the primary motivation for that behavior is mostly unconscious. And this particular Sabian symbol is suggesting that we have a capacity, an ability to go into a deeper level within our own consciousness in order to understand and see more clearly, have a clearer perception of certain unconscious factors within our own self, within our own psyche, and their mode of operation. The further comments about this is as follows. The owl has always been a symbol of wisdom, and its hooting call has evoked a rise to mysterious and hidden elements in life. The owl functions lucidly in the night aspect of existence. His eyes see what men normally fail to perceive. He represents that consciousness which is active where the processes of life normally escape the attention of the personal ego and its intellect. So you can see from the meaning of the fifth degree of Sagittarius, which is the Sabian symbol of this new moon. And we have Pallas Athena, which is the feminine version of Jupiter, which holds an abundance of wisdom, clear seeing and clear visions. So we have the owl represented through Pallas Athena, through the 5th degree of the Sabian symbol, and then we have all this Sagittarian vibration in a new moon, which is about beginning, giving birth to a cycle, a new cycle that can enable us, assist us, help us integrate and synthesize a greater sense of truth about our own self, about our own life, about our own level of consciousness, about the belief systems that we maybe hold on to, maybe something we have believed in because we were born into it through culture or through religion, through certain conditions. Something about those influences in our life can now be freed up because of the quincunx to Uranus. So we can establish a greater sense of truth in what we have believed, perhaps over a very, very, very long, long time. And this discovery of this new truth, this new way of seeing, is ultimately going to free us up, because that's what Uranus does. It frees us up from the conditioned and known ways of thinking, acting, seeing, and believing. And that just simply correlates to our evolutionary journey in the bigger scheme, in the bigger picture, which is what Sagittarius is. Sagittarius is the ability to intuit, to synthesize the bigger picture through our intuitive faculty. It is the seeing of truth or truths in the larger, more expansive way of understanding life. And our ability to see now an aspect of truth in terms of our own system of beliefs, our own version of truth. We have arrived at a point within our consciousness that is enabling us to be freed of something, of a belief, a belief pattern system, whatever it may be, that is essentially is outmoded, right? It's time to let it go. It's time to move forward, because this is about evolution. This is about consciousness, and every experience that we have, every theme that is sort of, weaved into our life experiences, is always showing up in order for us to be able to see and to understand where we have arrived within our own consciousness, within our own evolution. We have so many ingrained patterns. We have so many components to our unconscious psyche that basically dictates our mode of operation on a day-to-day basis. So when we have these beautiful transits, such as a new moon in Sagittarius conjunct Pallas Athena, it is truly an opportunity. And Sagittarius is the archetype of opportunities. It's the opportunity to grow, to expand one's consciousness, to move out of outmoded beliefs, patterns, behaviors, and so forth. So it's a very beautiful new moon from that perspective. And that Uranus, whilst it's a quincunx, which is a challenging aspect, it's also an aspect that will frequently correlate to leaving something behind. And in this case, it clearly has to do with a particular belief that you've had that is somehow in no way serving you, serving your evolutionary path moving forward. So that's how I see this new moon unfolding really over the next couple of weeks, because the new moon takes place in a couple of days' time, 26th and 27th of November. So have a think about where, first of all, where 4 degrees of Sagittarius is in your birth chart, and how you can use this beautiful new moon vibration to speak to what I have just been talking about in relation to your own understanding of truth, what you believe, and also your overall sense of faith, faith in yourself, faith in others, and faith in life. And where is it that you may need to examine and see things in a way that you were unable to before? Because that Sabian symbol, it's suggesting that material is going to rise from the unconscious components within yourself in order for you to be able to see certain things that need to be examined. We can't see the unconscious component within us, but it is the most powerful force that pretty much drives our entire existence and life. So opportunities like this enable us to align and connect and see what is normally hidden. And through Sagittarius, we can see it through a greater sense of illumination and expansion, and through our intuition as well. That's all I really want to say about this new moon. As we step forward and move forward into the month of December, there's quite a lot of amazing things going on, but I think I will leave that for another update because there's quite a lot to say. We have Jupiter ingressing into Capricorn, so that's a very important new cycle that's beginning. We have Chiron going stationary direct on the 12th of December. Lots of things going on early next year with Saturn, Pluto, and Saturn ingressing into Aquarius. There's a lot going on, so I'll leave that for another recording. But just one other thing I'd like to say, which I'll do a separate video on this when the time arises, which is in 2 weeks' time, for the full moon in Sagittarius. In Gemini. It's just important to think about this upcoming full moon in a couple of weeks' time from the point of view of this new moon, because this full moon is going to be exactly square Neptune. You can see here that in this chart, Neptune has an S, the letter S next to it, which is basically saying that Neptune on this day, 27th November, is stationary direct, okay, because Neptune has been retrograde for quite some time now. So Neptune will be direct when we have the full moon in Gemini. And the full moon in Gemini will be exactly square this Neptune. So that's a very tricky energy, and that can be very much tied up into distorted, exaggerated knowledge, information, perceptions, words, communication, disillusionment, lies, deception. It can bring in all those things. So we just need to be very careful, very aware of the information that we receive, because this Neptune is going to distort the truth to a very large extent when it's operating through the ego personality, which is the glamorized level of Neptune. Sometimes that can be intentional, sometimes that can just be born out of sheer confusion. So that's going to be a very strong theme in a couple of weeks' time when we have the full moon Gemini. So have a think about that as well, from the point of view of this new moon cycle is really a powerful opportunity to have a clearer seeing, understanding into your own beliefs, your own belief systems within your own self, and where are they tied? Where and what are they tied into from unconscious levels? Because that's what the Sabian symbol is saying. And Pallas Athena is also the goddess of clear seeing. So some truths will be born out of this that were hidden, right? And you will be able to see certain things that you could not see before. And just finally, again, the seeing that can come out of this will correlate with leaving something behind as a result of what now has risen into your conscious awareness and seeing, and it will create a sense of greater liberation in your journey moving forward. So I'll leave that with you guys. I apologize that this presentation has come out only a couple of days before the new moon. It's been pretty difficult here for us in Australia. We've had all these bushfires, and whilst I haven't been directly affected by a fire, I have been affected energetically, emotionally, and mentally through the sheer devastation of our wildlife. Some of you have probably tuned out by now. Some of you may still be listening. That's okay. I still want to speak about this for about a minute or two. Because even though you may be somebody who lives on the other side of the world, Europe, States, wherever, these acts that are taking place, they speak to larger crises and issues that we will all be subjected to in some kind of way, because these fires, and I know there's others happening in other parts of the world as well. I know they're not just in Australia, but we have been, the last couple of weeks, it's really been the most intense fires. And, so much of our wildlife is dead. It's freaking heartbreaking, and it literally hurts my soul. And I've been very affected by this the last couple of weeks, in not only me, but so many people in Australia. I mean, needless to say, that the people who have lost their homes, but the earth being treated in the way that she is, and the animal kingdom being slaughtered, murdered in the different ways that it is really unforgivable, and it has grave consequences for all of us and for the generations to come. So it is an important matter, even though most of our wildlife having been murdered the last couple of weeks, namely the koala. They've even said that the koala is now a species that's virtually extinct because of the amount of, basically there's thousands of them that have burnt to death. So look, it's a really devastating truth that has happened in this country. And I looked at the transits for the Australian chart, and there's some pretty interesting correlations to do with Ceres and Saturn. And Ceres is always about loss and grief, and Saturn is about separation and lots of other things as well. So there's some really powerful transits happening to the chart of Australia, including midpoints, Uranus and the ascendant and the moon, and it's pretty devastating. But as I said, the reason I'm mentioning it is because I've personally felt really, really hurt by these events, and they do speak to our future, whether we believe it or not, whether we like it or not. So it is important that we recognize what's going on, that we speak up about it as well, because in my view, these fires didn't happen by accident. And that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, there's a lot of things going on around the globe that are driven, unfortunately, out of greed. So why is that important now through this new moon? It is important because the more we can become aware, awake, the more conscious we can become, the more we can actually assist, because the more evolved we become as individual beings, as souls, the more we can act with kindness, compassion, empathy, understanding, and the more we can give our time and energy to matters that are actually important. So from that level, it is important to mention. So I'll leave it there, guys, and I will see you guys very soon with another update. As I said, energetically, there's a lot of shifts going on with planets moving out of their retrograde period into direct motion. So there's a lot of shifts energetically going on. I will be speaking about those soon. But just have a think about this new moon, because it's quite promising and it can be very, very powerful in your own personal journey of consciousness. Love and blessings, and see you all soon. Thanks. Bye.